Hey, good morning everyone. This is Skateness Johnson with the Machine Knitting Beginner Circle Group. And here's a project that is long overdue. I've actually started this video or attempted this video numerous times and failed. So today I am going to try it one more time and hopefully complete this video for you. So as promised, this is going to be a video for our most basic beginners. It's going to require no gauge, okay, no swatching, unless you'd like to. You can use any kind of yarn, and you can use any kind of machine. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be short rowing, and we're going to create a pattern that looks like S's, where we'll have some needles in hold, some needles out of work. So for instance, we may want to do 3 in hold, 1 out of work, for as wide of a fabric as you'd like. Now I'm working on a chunky / bulky machine, so my needles are spaced 9 millimeters apart. If you're working on a standard bed machine, your needles are going to be spaced half of that, which is 4.5 millimeters apart. So everywhere that I have a space here, you would probably have a needle. And so that's fine too. You could even do this on a mid gauge. It really does not matter. Spacing does not matter. It's only going to help determine the fabric look and feel, if you will. Now I have a piece of fabric here, and I'm calling it fabric because it's something that we made from the yarn, right? So it is technically a fabric. This is what I made here, and I hope you can see the design. This is what I made using the pattern that we're going to learn today. And I like to call it a wave pattern. It's been called different things, and there are different people online who show you how to do it, and I'm just going to show you the way I do it. But I want you to really think about the spacing and the needle setup that you would like. You know, don't follow mine necessarily. Think about what you would like. So in this particular one, what I did was I had 1, 2, 3 needles in work and 1 needle out of work. So where you see the little squiggly knitting, the stockinette knitting, that's the 3 needles that are knitting. And the space between those, that's that 1 needle that was out of work. Now I did this on a standard gauge machine, not a bulky. On a bulky, it's going to be much more airy if I use the same weight yarn, but if I use a thicker yarn, then it won't be as airy. So you have to figure out your combination of the type of yarn, thickness of yarn you'd like to use, and the type of machine you're going to use in terms of the gauge of that machine to determine the fabric you're going to get. And that's why swatching can be so important, because it lets you know what that combination is going to give you. How does it feel? How does it hang? How does it drape? Is it too airy? Is it too thick of a fabric? You get to decide when you fool around with the tension on your machine, the gauge of your machine, and obviously the type of yarn, the thickness of your yarn. So I made this. I'm probably going to scrap it. I'm not really doing anything with it, but I just want you to see what we're going to be making today. Now again, this is with needles in work and out of work. You see that nice open air pattern. That's the front where we have stockinette stitch, and here's the back. These are all the purls. So this will be the side that's facing you. This is what it's going to look like when it's facing you. Now I gave this a light steaming to make it flat, but normally it would curl up slightly. Okay, so I have already threaded my yarn mass, but not my carriage. And I just want to give you a quick tip on working this pattern. Now I'm using my Studio Mod 155 machine. This is a bulky machine, as I mentioned, and it's a Studio. So a couple things that I have on my machine, I have these brushes that flip down, up and down. My hold position is here on my carriage, these 2 levers. So I move it from when they're flat down, they're on 2, and when they're sticking out, they're on 1. So I'm going to need my machine to be set to hold, or my carriage set to hold, and on my machine it's going to be the 1 lever. If you're using a brother machine, you'll have a lever on the left hand side of your carriage that will say N, L, N and H. You want to make sure you put it on H for hold. So that's the main thing. We want to make sure that our carriage is set to hold position. And then you also want to determine what's going to be the best tension for your yarn. Now with the yarn that I plan on using today, I'm going to set mine to tension 7.2. So 7 and 2 clicks. That's what I'm going to have mine on. Also, my center knob, the dial, stitch dial, is going to be on stockinette because we're going to be knitting in stockinette today. Okay, so that's basically the only setting that I'm doing on my carriage, is to make sure that I have, oops, I didn't do it, hold position on. Then it's set for general stockinette, and you can fool around with your tension to see what works for you. But normally 4 is kind of right in the middle, and maybe try starting with 4 depending on your yarn, okay? Now on a studio machine, you don't really need to put a lot of weights on. On the Brother, you will need some weights, but we'll just try it and see how it works. I'm going to start off with having my weaving brushes, or these tuck brushes, down so that they rub up against the yarn when we first cast on, okay? Alright, so let's talk about the cast on. Cast on is going to be E-wrap cast on. Now, before we can cast on, we need to determine how many stitches we're going to have, or needles rather, we're going to be working with, and what the needle step is going to be. Excuse me. I'm going to be working 3 in 1. Now, I normally, on a standard gauge, I like to work 5 in 1 because I like a little more fabric than I do spacing. But on this bulky, I'm going to do it 3 to 1. So we'll see how that comes out. So that means I'm going to do, and you can, oh, by the way, you can start anywhere on the bed that you want. I'm only starting on this end because it's closest to the camera. You can start anywhere on the needle bed that you like. Okay, does not matter. We don't need to start at 0. So I'm going to have 3 needles in hold position, 1 out of work. 3 needles in hold position, and you can just select them with your fingers. 1 out of work. 3 needles in hold position, 1 out of work. 3 needles in hold position, 1 out of work. And 3 needles in hold position, maybe I'll do one more, 1 out of work. There, 3 needles in hold. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections of 3 needles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections of the 1 needle out of work in between those sections. Okay, so this is where we're going to knit, and that space is where the yarn is going to get carried across. It's going to create these little bars in there. Alrighty? Everybody with me so far? Make sense? I hope so. You can always pause this video and go back to the beginning. My yarn just flew back up. You can always pause the video and go back to the beginning if there's something that you need to hear again, okay? But we're going to move on. Let me just thread that again. All right, so what we want to do is we want to do an E-wrap cast on. Now, I like to put my tail, a little clip on the tail of my yarn first to hang that down. Excuse me. Hang that down there. And then we're going to go between that first needle on the left and the second needle on the left. And we're just going to wrap it to the left and go under. Again, we're going to come up between the next set of needles, wrap to the left, and go under. So if you are familiar with cursive writing, this is similar to writing an E in cursive writing. That's why they call it an E-wrap, because it looks like an E. Okay, and we want to do it loosely. You don't want to pull tight, because if you pull tight, then that first row is going to knit very tightly. We don't want that. Okay, this creates a nice finished edge that will not unravel when you take it off the machine. And again, this is called E-wrap. So we're just going to go up between the next 2 sets of needles, wrap it over to the left and under. Next needle, over to the left and under. So we're always going between the next empty needle, well, the 2 next empty needles. We're always going to go between the 2 next empty needles. Okay, we just did this one, So since this has yarn on it, we're going between the two next empty needles. Always. Think of it that way. Two next empty needles, we go right in between them. Two next empty needles, we're going right in between them. Two next empty needles, we're going right in between them. So the goal is to only have one loop on a needle, one loop of thread on a needle at a time. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've E-wrapped. Okay, all of my needles have a stitch on it and it's going loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop. It goes underneath to the right, over the top to the left, underneath to the right, over the top to the left. And this is because I'm starting on the left hand side. Okay, and I'm using the yarn that's coming from my mast up top. And now I'm going to bring my carriage over. I'm going to open up the little yarn guide and slide the yarn into my carriage. Sorry that it's hard to see, but I've got my camera stationary and I really can't move it. But we do have some videos in the group on how to thread your carriage. Take a look at my video on the different types of carriages and you can see where the yarn feeder is. Okay, so we are all threaded up. Now I'm going to do my first row without any weights, but I do have my brushes down. So if you have brushes on your carriage, this is a good time to put them down. Make sure you have enough tension on your yarn so that that spring up top is a 45-degree angle. We want that pulled nice and tight, okay, so we can go across. And me, I have a habit of I like to lift up on my yarn from the carriage. When this yarn is here coming from the carriage, you can't see it, but I like to hold it and pull up on it a little bit as I go across. Okay, now, that was silly of me. I have my carriage set to hold and I went across, so of course, nothing is going to knit, right? Okay, now I've done that plenty times. That's an honest mistake. However, we actually want to knit something. So, keep your carriage in hold position. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the first bunch of needles on the right hand side next to the carriage and we're going to bring them back from D position to C, or if your machine has on the bed has E, we're going to bring it back from E to D. All we're going to do is bring it back so that it is in the next uppermost working position, and that allows these needles to knit even though the carriage is set to hold. So we're going to do, and count with me, 1, 2, and I probably should hang a weight because it's starting to slip. Hang on. Something didn't knit properly. Okay, let me hang my weight. So we just did 2 stitches. I'm going to hang my weight now because it doesn't want to stay on the needles. I'm hanging my weight just on the section that I'm working on. That was 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We did 6 passes. Carriages on the right. Now we're going to pull the second set into working position and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Okay, so the key is, and I'm just going to hang another weight. Now I'm using weights that might be a little bit different than what you would be using. And that's because I have some weights that I made that I like to use with my ribber, but I'm going to switch over to the regular claw weight, so you guys probably have these. Okay, I'm going to hang 1 on the one section, and I'm going to hang the other on the other section of needles that we're knitting with. Okay, so I've got my weights hanging. We stop with our carriage on the right. I think we did 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to bring a third section into working position. We're going to knit across one time. But on this pass, we are now going to pull the first section back into hold position. So we're not going to knit that. And then we're going to move our weight over to the new section that we've just knitted. Make sense? Okay, so we did the one pass. We took that first section, put it back in hold. Now we're working on the next two sections. Okay, that was number one pass. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, we did our 6. We're going to pull the next section into working position. Okay, and we're going to do one pass. Same thing. The last section that's still out, the last section that we did here, we're going to put that in hold. We're moving from right to left. So we're putting that next section in hold, and we're moving our weights over from that section. Okay, remember we did 1, so now we're going to do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're doing 6 passes. Again, next section into working position, right? We do 1 pass. Oops. We do 1 pass, and we're going to move our weights, right? So this last section goes into hold. You pick up that weight, and we move it over to the needles that we're working on. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Get that? Next section is going to go into work, right? And then we're going to do 1 pass. That was 1. I'm going to put this section back into work. And we're going to move our weights over. Okay? We're always going to be working in 2 sections at a time, except for when we do that 1 pass to add the new section. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have no other section to bring into work now. We're on the last 2 sections. So we're going to give it 1 more. 7. And then we're going to bring that last section back into hold. Make sense? Okay. Now, we need to finish off this row going to the left. We're going to give this more stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to now go from left to right. Now, we're going to pull this section into working position and do 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Same thing. Next section. Pull it into work. We're going to do 1 pass. Just 1. Now, that 1 pass, we have 3 sections in work, is only so that we can get the carriage across and take that first section out of work. So we did our 1. Make sure that you have your weights in the right place. If they're really far down, probably a good time to move them up. Okay, we just did that 1 pass. I'm just moving the weights up. Okay, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what do you think we do now? right? We're going to take the next section, because we're going from left to right now. Next section to the right is going to get put into work so we can knit it. Then we're going to do one pass. Excellent. And then we're going to take that last section and put that back into hold. That was one that we did. Don't forget to move your weights over. From the one that's now on hold, we don't need weights on that. We need to move that over to the one that we're working with. Okay, and now we're going to do 6. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what do we do now? Next section going to the right is going to get put into work. One pass. Switch our weights over, right? We'll take this out of work and switch our weights over. And maybe move our weights up. Okay, now we got 2 sections, so we know carriage on one side. That means we did our one pass, and we have to do 5 more. 2, 3, 4, 5, and that makes 6 altogether, right? Now, one more section. It goes into work. We do our one pass. We take the last one, put that back into hold, move our weights over. Always want to have some weights on our sections. Okay, now we're going to finish that off. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. However, we don't have another section to put into work, right? We don't have anything else. So we're going to do one more pass. Then we're going to put a section to hold, like we always do. And we're going to do 6 more. Now my weight is already here under this section because I've already been working on this section, but I have to give it another 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, it's 6 altogether. 6. I started from 2. I should have started from 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the end. Now, we are going back the opposite direction. We just keep going back and forth. So what do we need to do? We need to now bring this section into work so we can knit it. And we're going to do our 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we need to bring this third section into work just so we can do one pass, right? One pass, 1. Last section that we did, or the very first one, we're going to put that in hold. We're going to move our weights. If you haven't done so already, move those weights over. Make sure that they're directly under excuse me, the sections that you are working. All right, so that was the one pass. Now we have to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, bring that next section into work. Do one pass. Bring the last section into hold. Move your weights. Okay, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bring the one section into work. Give it one pass. Bring the last section into hold. Move our weights. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next section into work. Give it one pass. Last section into hold. Move your weights. You start to get into a rhythm. Okay, the only time it makes a little bit of a difference is at the end, because we know we still got to do our 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we have no other sections to put into work. So we're just going to take this out of work and put it into hold. Oops, I'm sorry. That was wrong. Because if you see where my knitting is, I can't put this in the hold because when I pass the carriage over, this yarn is going to cross over that, and that's not what we want. The carriage should have to be on the left hand side in order to put this on hold, okay? So here's what we're going to do to fix that. I've got my tool and my latches are going to be open on my needles. I'm going to push in. Okay, so now the stitches are on the tool. Then I'm going to pull back out so the stitches are open and my yarn is laying in the hooks. My yarn is in the hooks. Okay, so all we're going to do is go back to this side because the carriage should be here. Okay, and I think we probably gave it an extra row. Doesn't really matter. Now we take these out of work. Okay, see, the carriage is on the correct side in order to take these out of work. We don't have any live yarn just hanging over any sections. We actually knit our way to the other side. All right, now we're going to give this last section some work. 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I should have counted for 1. It should be 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Sometimes my counts get off, but remember, it's going to be 6. It's always going to be 6, whether it's the 1 pass and then 5 or just 6 altogether. The key is to make sure you have the carriage on the right side. So we want to go back this way, which means we're going to have to knit our way across. So the carriage has to be on the left if we want to go to the right. And on the left, I mean, it needs to be on the left of the knitting, the left of whatever you need to knit. We need to knit now this section and this section. Okay, so we did our 6 over here. All right, we're good with this one, I believe. Confusing myself. Yes, we did our 6 over here. So now we're going to pull this section into working position, and we're going to go back the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And pull the third one into working position, and that only gets 1 pass. And now at this time, first section goes in the hold, and we move our weights. Now, you probably need to move your weights up from both sides now because they should be very, very far down if you haven't done so already. Okay, so that was the first pass. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, pull this into working position. Okay, now we have 3 sections. We know we just do 1 pass. Last section goes on hold, and we move our weights. Okay, now we're getting there. We're getting there. So what I want to do at this point is I'm going to stop recording for a second because I want to move the camera and show you what everything should look like from your vantage point sitting at your machine. Be right back. Okay guys, I'm back and I am sitting in front of my knitting machine looking at the fabric that I'm creating, and this is using 3 stitches in work with 1 out of work. You get these ladders. Can you see how it's starting to curve? Can you see that? We're starting to get those little swirly figures in there. Okay, and that's from doing those passes and doing the extra 6 on one side. Now let me show you a way of always knowing where you are in your pattern. I did make a video about this that's in the file section, but let me just kind of explain it again for you guys, okay? Because I have you on, you're watching right now. I want to send you to another video. Okay, so can you see how there's an extra big hole here? You have a space here, but here is an extra big hole. And I can see already that I made a mistake somewhere over here, but we're not going to worry about that right now. That should have bars across, so I skipped something somewhere. But, excuse me. So here, these bars are created by that needle that's out of work when we do a pass. So if I have my carriage on one side and I leave my knitting, I come back, and I'm not sure what direction I'm supposed to be going in, the way for me to tell is to look at my knitting. So I can see that my knitting is slanted. Okay, this big space means this has not been worked yet. So that means that I'm going, or that it has been worked. I'm going from left to right because it's slanting up. So I should be going the direction it's slanting up. You can see the big space and then the smaller space is here. I should be going this way. Okay. Also, when you look, oh, I see what I did here. I need to do my passes. Also, when you look at these bars, you can tell where you are in that 6. Count your bars. There's always going to be the number of passes plus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 6 plus 1. Because when you do the first row, you put a bar there. Or it starts off with a bar, rather, from the last set. And then you do your 6 passes. So you'll always have 7. If you have less than 7, you know you need to do a few more in order to get 7 bars in between. So right here, I have that 1 bar. That means that where I am in my knitting right now, I need to do my 6. I have not done my 6. That's why I only have 1 bar. Does that make sense? I hope so. I'm at this point in my knitting. So I'm looking at my carriage. I'm looking at everything set up. I can tell exactly where I am because the fabric is slanting up. So I know I'm going in that direction. I only have 1 bar here when I should have 7. That means it's time for me to do my 6 passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So I hope this makes sense. I'm going to continue knitting so that you guys can just watch, and I'm going to speed up the video. And then when I'm done, I'm going to take it off the machine and show you what I've got. I did extra row there. That's perfectly fine. We're not going to worry about that. I lost count for a moment. Doesn't even matter. Alright guys, that was the last section that I'm going to do on this video. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm just going to flip it up. I've got all my needles in hold. We're not going to talk about binding off because there are plenty of videos there. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Have you guys take a look. So this is the wrong side of the fabric. I'll try not to catch it on these needles in hold, but this is the right side of the fabric. Look how pretty that is. Or it is to me. And this is just with a worsted weight yarn. I'm actually using just a cheap Red Heart Super Saver yarn that you can buy at any craft store, Walmart, at least in the States. I'm not sure outside of the United States, but super cheap yarn. And what I like to do is I don't like to steam this. I like this little puffy curved look of it. It makes a great cowl. I've made several of them for holiday gifts for people. And again, this is using 3 needles in work with 1 out of work. And you get a nice thin squiggly line of knitting with nice, you know, holes. My carriage was set to 7 and 2 clicks. And this is on my bulky machine with the worsted weight. But you can do this, like I said, with any yarn on any machine. Fool around with it. Try 5 stitches in work, maybe 2 out of work, or 6 stitches in work. Try it instead of doing